Spider-Man has some pretty iconic powers, be it wall crawling, web slinging, you know, all the actual spider stuff. But there are some actual caveats that come with that sort of thing. And you know what? Those are what we're exploring today, because it ain't all pretty. Let's do it. In at 10, acidic hands. Discovered by Kane Parker after the Clones event, a deformity in his hands causes Kane to possess the ability to generate an endothermic energy that upon skin-to-skin contact inflicts severe burn marks on individuals. Yeah, this man can use his hands that stick to walls to also burn people. Usually he would leave his distinctive marks across a person's face, calling it the mark of Cain, although it is believed that he can do so on other parts of the body, which I mean it makes sense given that, you know, you can just grab on with a hand and then boom, you're burned. But interestingly enough, he also utilizes this way in like a non-harmful manner, using it to burn away his like beard hair, which just gives him a better trim, which is just kind of funny. I like the fact that he uses it to burn his hand into people's faces, but then also just gives himself a nice little trim. But while this ability was discovered by Kane, Peter soon after learns that he can do the same thing. And while he hasn't used this ability, he is still able to do it and just chooses not to because it's a horrible thing to do. He can also pull people's skin off using the stickiness of his hands, which I have asked before, like I've proposed that idea before because I think that he should have threatened to do that to Kingpin instead of filling his lungs with web, but oh well. In at 9, camouflage. Now this is one of the primary abilities used by Miles Morales' Spider-Man, however, you can actually see that in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man he has this ability as well. Not to the same extent, of course, he can't turn invisible, but there's a theory about how this presents itself. Firstly, the fact that Spider-Man talks to MJ, Aunt May, and Harry without them recognizing Peter's voice could be explained by this just being thanks to this camouflage ability. MJ only recognizes that Peter is Spider-Man after he wants to tell her, you know, after she kisses her fiance upside down. Like, he wants her to know, so of course the camouflage would be off then. And Harry only learns his identity after literally taking his mask off. So yeah, this would also explain why the guy on the train in Spider-Man 2 describes the almost 30-year-old Maguire as just a kid barely older than my son. Or in the comics and animated series, we see that Peter eventually mutates into a giant spider. Maybe staying human is this camouflage ability. His power keeps him looking human. To further support this, in the animated series, Peter starts losing his powers shortly before mutating into the spider creature. If one of his powers was keeping him human, then it would make total sense that he mutates after losing them. And Peter actually started losing his powers in Spider-Man 2, so maybe that's a storyline we could have seen later on. In at 8, stingers. The Other represents a potent spider deity that's intricately connected to the web of life and destiny. While the true nature of its purpose remains enigmatic, the entity grants its chosen vessels heightened abilities and the potential for transformation into a spider-like humanoid monster in times of peril or intense anger. The Earth 616 Spider-Man was selected by the Great Weaver to serve as the receptacle for the power of the Other when he assumed the mantle of Spider-Man. However, due to his subconscious resistance, Spider-Man suppressed and denied this spider aspect until a confrontation with the inheritor Morlun, who consumed the essence of totem avatars, prompting a resurgence of his connection to the Other. At one point during the storyline, Peter Parker has created retractable stingers that are concealed beneath his wrists. And so yeah, with these stingers possessed like a razor sharp edge that could be extended when needed, and then they also delivered like a venom that induced temporary paralysis into his target, which is kind of dope. Kane Parker actually is currently the individual who uses this ability because of course it's Kane, but yeah, it's still pretty dope. And it's 7, clairvoyance. When you think about it, spider sense is kind of predicting the future. It doesn't give you visions or show you exactly what will happen like is typically associated with clairvoyance, but instead it's presented just like a really good gut instinct. Like that tingling sensation that accompanies the spider sense can vary in intensity, providing an indication of the threat level, but like a casual encounter with a potential adversary who isn't actively engaging with an individual may trigger a mild alert, which means that you should be cautious. But on the other hand, when you're facing like an imminent and life-threatening danger like a sniper, like the sensation is going to intensify significantly, even possibly becoming painful. And and instinctively it compels you into action. And while the spider sense doesn't reveal the specific nature of the threat, it offers you guidance on the direction that you should move in order to evade it and things like that. Okay, this extraordinary ability warns you of various perils, okay, ranging from projectiles to like lasers and even contaminated food. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a form of clairvoyance. I can't do that. When I do it, it's called autism. In its 6, equilibrium. While yes, having sticky limbs and appendages makes it easy and possible to stick to walls, that's not all that you need to actually be Spider-Man. Like sure you can stand on a wall, but even with all the strength of your abs, you wouldn't be able to keep you like balanced and standing upright, alright? No one can do that, not even Chuck Norris. Like how else could you not lose your momentum or anything while swinging through New York, okay? He's swinging around buildings, through alleys, even through like the spaces between cabs and their backs, okay? There's no way that this guy could do all of that just inherently, okay? Like yeah, he's got the powers of a spider, but spiders don't swing around the city doing flips. His center of gravity is constantly fixing himself to keep himself balanced while chasing after red psychopathic space aliens and dudes in rhino costumes. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a power. And at 5, super speed. Spider-Man's agility and acrobatics are often associated with his spider sense and spider qualities, but there's another superpower that often goes unnoticed: incredible speed. Okay, while swinging between buildings, Spider-Man can cover 2 miles in a mere 5 seconds. And it's not just like his web slinging that propels him. His speed allows him to also avoid attacks and dodge bullets. Okay, if you can dodge bullets, you're freaking fast. Spider-Man's exceptional speed was showcased extremely well during the Civil War storyline when he attacked Luke Cage's mansion prior to switching sides. He bursted into the mansion, faced off a room filled with SWAT team officers, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye, but he moved so swiftly that he appeared as a blur, taking down multiple opponents without being detected. Okay, this often overlooked power grants Spider-Man an incredible advantage in combat, and explains quite a lot. I mean, he won't be beating Quicksilver or Flash in any races, but dude's still fast as hell. Okay, if you look like a blur, then yeah, you're fast. And at 4, talking to spiders. God, thank God they don't talk about this one anymore, because spiders. The power to control and summon spiders may initially appear better suited for like a horror comic, but it actually happens to be one of Spider-Man's lesser known abilities. How he chooses not to emphasize the terrifying aspect of this power, thank the Lord. Instead, he uses it in more of like a collective strength sense, tapping into the power of many rather than just aiming to haunt his opponents with lifelong nightmares. Thank you, Peter. This skill likely was introduced into the comics because people were like watching Ant-Man a little too much, you know, because he can like control ants, and now even Squirrel Girl can command squirrels. So it just seems like if you have a connection to an animal, you should be able to control them, apparently. So yeah, Spider-Man had that sort of connection established with arachnids. In truth, it feels more aligned with like Venom or Carnage, but I mean, the only reason that Venom has spider powers is because he bonded to Peter in the first place, so I understand why that wouldn't happen. But like, yeah, okay, they're twisted villains who would fully exploit this ability, but thank God Venom doesn't have it. Yeah, interestingly enough though, it's not the mainstream Spider-Man who possesses this ability, but rather Kane Parker, but I'm sure Spider-Man could do it too. If he can do the acid hands and he had the claws, I'm sure he could do this, but thank God he doesn't. Getting close to the end in number 3, Regeneration. While webbing is handy for transportation and apprehending criminals and sometimes even just making a mess if you want to, Peter's mind actually lets him use this ability in unconventional and actually kind of genius ways, specifically turning it back on himself. This gave rise to the concept of a web cocoon, an audacious idea that bears resemblance to how Peter immobilizes criminals with webbing until the authorities arrive, because you know he wraps them up. But the only difference is that when Peter does the web cocoon on himself, he uses it as a tool for hibernation and accelerated healing. Peter has only used this extremely insane skill on one occasion, but it was because he sustained near fatal injuries during a battle. So he encased himself in a cocoon of webbing to induce rapid healing. It's so insanely cool and a tremendously valuable ability for Spider-Man, but it appears to be exclusive to Peter himself and doesn't really extend to others, and again, he hasn't used it again since. The primary reason behind the limitation was, well, I mean, he's in hibernation when this is happening. You can't really produce Spider-Man comics when Peter's not Spider-Man. But also, while he's in there, he sheds the damaged skin and basically regenerates a whole new body, which is gonna make us all wonder the same thing that WandaVision did. Ship of Theseus? Is it the same Peter, or is it a new Peter if he regenerated basically everything? There you go, debate it in the comments. You're welcome. Engagement. But ultimately, in at number 2, radiation resistance. Now, while some spider-related abilities are well known within Spider-Man's world, you know, wall crawling, proportional strength, knowing the formula to make webs, spider sense, one of them is actually lesser known, but in reality makes a lot of sense. Spider-Man has demonstrated a resistance to poisons and harmful chemicals on multiple occasions, and while not a pivotal power, it does serve a purpose. Essentially, if a villain attempts to poison Peter Parker, their efforts would just be in vain. Moreover, if Mary Jane were to betray Peter and attempt to slip something into his coffee, he would remain oblivious. His resistance to basic poisons could potentially be exploited if someone like knew this and like tried to use it against him, so it's often overlooked, but yeah, it adds another layer of protection for Peter that reflects just like the fact that he is in essence just a Spider-Man. And given that his powers were given to him by a radioactive spider, the resistance extends to radiation as well. So yeah, that's right. If Green Goblin ever goes to Chernobyl, Spidey can still stop him. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Mobile. Hell yes. I love how ridiculous this is. Corona Motors, aiming to promote their environmentally friendly car engine, enlisted the services of advertising firm Carter and Lombardo to propose the idea of a Spider-Mobile in Spider-Man comics. Initially dismissing it as foolish, Spider-Man reconsidered when he realized the dire need for money to cover his rent and expenses. So with the assistance of the Human Torch, they successfully constructed the Spider-Mobile in the comics. After a crash course in driving, Spider-Man's first encounter with the vehicle led him to capture one of Hammerhead's henchmen. However, Mysterio ends up getting Spider-Man to dump the car in a river, prompting Corona Motors to demand its return, despite the inability to locate it in the water. Spider-Man faced a modified version of the Spider-Mobile, engineered by the Tinkerer later on, engaging in a fierce battle with it. Spider-Man eventually subdued it and returned the damaged imitation Spider-Mobile to Carter and Lombardo, but yeah, that's a thing that happened in the comics. Yeah, there you go. Anyways, if you want to know more about powers that you didn't know people had, be sure you click the video that's popping up on screen. Thanks for watching. Thwip thwip instead of pew pew.